What if I told you there was a supplement you could take that would provide similar benefits to that of sunscreen, but from the inside? Something that protects against sunburns, against UVA damage that causes the aging and raging of the skin and DNA damage. Well, that's what we're going to be discussing in today's podcast. Welcome, everybody. This is Brandon. Thank you for joining me today for another podcast episode. Very grateful to have you here. We're going to be diving into the research and behind this nutraceutical, this natural botanical extract that's actually widely available. And there's a great deal of research suggesting that it has potentially similar benefits to that of sunscreen in protecting the skin against UVA, UVB, as well as even visible light and the changes in the skin that occur from visible light. This is episode 3 of my podcast. I'm very happy to be here. If you're on YouTube watching the video portion, welcome. If you're on Apple Podcast or Spotify, welcome. Thank you for listening to me today. I really, really appreciate you being here. Give this video or this podcast a like, give it a high rating. I would love to have that. That helps me out a lot. So thank you very much for doing that. And I guess we can just go ahead and dive right in. So like I have said in my previous podcast, my podcast episode 1 and 2, none of what I'm saying in this podcast or in any of my episodes is meant to be medical advice or substitution for medical advice. Really, this is just a way for me to do research on a topic that I'm really, really interested in, that of anti-aging, of spirituality, of law of attraction, things like that. And I can just provide and relay that information to a wider audience so that you can take the information that I am learning and applying to my own life, read up more on it, and do research on your own. So like I've said in my previous episodes, none of what I'm saying in these podcast episodes are meant to be medical advice or substitution for medical advice. Really, everything that I'm doing in these podcast episodes, I'm discussing things that are interesting to me, the research that I'm doing on my own, in my own time, that I would be doing anyway if I didn't have a podcast. And I'm just recording it here for my own well-being and my own notes, and providing the information to you if you're watching or listening to this podcast so that you can take it and do your own research and find out what works for you. And if it's any sort of, nutritional or health-related content, hopefully you can take that to your doctor and take the research that you do on your own to your doctor or physician or clinician or whomever you work with, and develop a plan, individualized plan just for you. So that's my goal for these podcasts, is really to provide information of the research that I am just applying to my own life and the things that I'm fascinated in. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the podcast episode. So today, like I said, we're going to be discussing something called Polypodium leucotomos extract. And this is basically fern. This is the fern plant that's found in Central and South America. But before we get into that and the research behind it, of the skin benefits and the anti-aging benefits of this extract, I always start my podcast episodes off with something that I'm doing in my own life, maybe a product or a practice that I've been applying to my own life. And the first 2 episodes, it's been, I think, like a hair supplement, hair, nails, and skin supplement. The second episode was another supplement, vitamin D3, and just sort of like try to relay that back to anti-aging and things like that. But there's a practice that I have been doing for the longest time, and something that I highly recommend everybody do every single day, at least when you wake up in the morning and before you go to bed, is the practice of gratitude. And you probably have heard of this practice several times before in your life. It's so much more than just being grateful for something nice that happens to you, or nice people who open the door for you, or it's so much more. It's about being grateful for everything in your life, every single thing, right down to running water, to having clean, clear, fresh water to drink, to having everything that you need to live a comfortable, happy, fulfilling life. And the reason why I find this so important is because there are health benefits to being grateful and doing a gratitude practice. There are some studies suggesting that practicing daily gratitude, writing down the things that you're grateful for in a journal, or saying it out loud, or talking about the things that you're grateful for, is associated with longevity and improved well-being. There's also associations between gratitude practices and reduced inflammatory response. There's some research to suggest that in small sample sizes. But like I said in my previous in my previous podcast about meditation and stress reduction. Meditation, it's similar to meditation in that there are associations between improving your well-being through gratitude and reduced inflammation. So when it comes to aging, there's something called inflammaging, and a lot of the pathogenesis of aging is sort of mediated. There's a lot of inflammatory drivers to the aging process, both in terms of the cellular and molecular aspects of aging, but also the visible signs of aging as well. So having a gratitude practice in play every single day may be really important for an anti-aging, overall holistic anti-aging lifestyle. But in addition to that, being grateful, gratitude is highly attractive. And there are so many spiritual texts throughout the millennia, or throughout centuries. We have the Bible, we have the Quran, we have Buddhism, we have all these different spiritual texts and religions that say gratitude, when you're grateful for what you have expands and becomes more, and you're given more of what you're grateful for. And I find that to be very, very true. And I really challenge you to, or at least encourage you to start practicing some form of gratitude, even if it is waking up in the morning and just listing off the things that you're grateful for. And like I said, it can be anything that comes to mind. It can just be looking over and seeing that, you have lights to illuminate your house, or you have running water, like I said, to clean your body and to keep you healthy and energized. You have food to eat. You have, all these things you can touch and feel and taste and touch. And you have all these things that help you to experience life more fully. And I do believe that it's highly attractive, and it does bring more into your life. And if you watched my law of attraction videos here on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, you go back, far when I first started my YouTube channel. This YouTube channel was focused on law of attraction and spirituality, and really trying to connect to your source, quote unquote, or the power that sort of emanates throughout the universe. And I think tapping into that, the key to tapping into that is being grateful, giving thanks and being grateful, because that is going to bring more good into your life. When you focus on the good, you see more of that good, and more good comes to you. So I really, really encourage you to have some form of gratitude and meditation in your lifestyle. Even if you're only interested in anti-aging, having some form of giving thanks throughout the day, whatever that may be, even if you don't necessarily believe in anything, just being grateful that you have the good things that you do, and even being grateful in sort of the quote unquote, I'm using that a lot here, bad circumstances or events or situations in your life, because there's always something to be grateful for in those situations. And it's hard. It's very, very hard and challenging to find something that you can be grateful for in those situations, but it is definitely possible. There always is some sort of learning experience that's going to help you grow and advance to the next level. But definitely being focused on the things that are working in your life and the things that are good in your life, that's going to bring more of those good things into your life. And it's very, very expansive in a very positive way. So I highly recommend that you are doing some sort of gratitude practice, but that's all I have to say about that. I think that was probably a little bit too much, but I think it is fascinating that these sort of mind-body techniques, these interventions like gratitude, meditation, hypnosis, that there are associations in clinical studies. There are associations between physiological responses, like I said, reduced inflammatory markers in the body, increased elevations of endogenous antioxidant, enzymatic antioxidants like catalase and superdioxide dismutase. We saw that with yoga. We saw that with Tai Chi. In my previous episode, I talked about that. It's really, really interesting and fascinating that we can sort of, have these things to our disposal that are free. We can just get on YouTube and watch yoga videos or meditation videos, or we can just do it ourselves, and we can have, and gratitude is free, but it's so, so important. And, I really highly encourage that you have some sort of like mind-body interventions, in a holistic plan for your health, your mental, your emotional, and your physical health, because it's all tied together and it all plays a role, and there's a dynamic interplay with each other. So yeah, definitely highly encourage you to do that. But moving on, so let's go ahead and get into the topic of today's podcast. So today I'm going to be discussing, like I said, let me see if I can say this, with some sort of aggressiveness. So it definitely comes through. But Polypodium leucotomos, PL extract. I'm just going to be saying PL or PLE from now on, but this is a fern extract. You also have seen the brand names of Fern Block or Heliocare, which are highly popular, and I'll get into the product in a minute. But really, what I want to focus on is the research behind it, the research behind this product, this fern extract, and the science behind how it works to protect the skin, especially in regard to anti-aging. So if you're watching the video, I am going to be looking down a lot at my notes because I do have extensive notes of all the research. And also, if you look down either in the notes section of the podcast or in the description section of the podcast of this episode, I will leave all of the references that you can go ahead. And I think most of them are just on PubMed, so you can go ahead. None of them should be behind a paywall, so you can just pop that into Google or pop that into PubMed, all those references, and you can do some more reading on your own so you can get more in-depth knowledge about the studies that I'm mentioning here. But this extract, PL, let's just start by talking about just sort of the sun and ultraviolet radiation, just as a backgrounder. You probably already know all about this, especially if you are into anti-aging. UV, ultraviolet radiation, UVR, the broad spectrum UVR contributes to skin cancer. Probably the most important thing about skin protecting the skin against the sun is skin cancer. But I know that a lot of people are highly motivated by the anti-aging component of sun protection and photoprotection. But this UVR, it does induce DNA damage, and it increases, and in so doing, or at least in corresponding, it increases oxidative stress. So oxidative stress, like I said, oxidative stress, inflammation, free radical production, this contributes to the aging process, both in terms of, again, the cellular, molecular, biological aspect of aging, but also the physical, visible aspect of aging. Oxidative damage, DNA damage, and free radical inflammation, these all contribute. And it's caused by, in large part, UV radiation. In fact, when it comes to skin aging, up to 80, well, actually maybe even up to 90% of that aging process is caused by the sun, UV radiation. And there is significant interest in using botanical containing supplements with considerable antioxidant activity. So antioxidants are basically compounds that have an extra electron. They can donate it to free radicals, which are basically a molecule, an unstable molecule with a missing electron. And so the antioxidant can donate that electron and stabilize that free radical, and it prevents it from wreaking havoc throughout the body and harming the body. So that's basically the gist of the antioxidant systems. But there are endogenous antioxidant systems in the body, like catalase, glutathione, superoxide dismutase, glutathione. These antioxidants, they do decline over time, but there are ways of increasing it through, like I said, mind-body techniques, as well as supplements, nutrition, and possibly even topical products can help to increase the skin's antioxidant system and improve that and protect it against the sun. But polyphenols, these are found in plants. So these have been considered, I guess, a group of natural bioactive products, and they do have potential health benefits. So there's a lot of research out there suggesting that these polyphenols from botanical extracts, like this fern extract, like the PL extract, may have certain health benefits and a wide variety of health benefits. But really, in regard to the skin, there may be some potential photoprotective benefits for the skin with these polyphenols, both in terms of the intake of the polyphenols as well as the topical application of polyphenols or botanical containing products that have polyphenols just naturally in them. And when it comes to skin protection, sunscreens are important. Sunscreen, I talk about that. I review that on my YouTube channel. I review different sunscreens, mineral sunscreens, chemical sunscreens. These are important. I mean, these do block or absorb UVA, which is the aging rays, and UVB too, which are the burning rays that also play a role in skin aging, but definitely, damage the skin and contribute to the increased risk of skin cancer. But yeah, they block this radiation and reduce the impact of reactive oxygen species, or ROS. This is the oxidative stress that I was talking about. The thing about sunscreens, though, they aren't a natural they're not a magic bullet. So just using sunscreen on its own isn't going to be, it's going to be better than not using anything. But it's not going to be enough, in my opinion, especially if you're going to be outside. If it's the summer and you're going to be spending time by the pool or on the beach, or you're going to be outside, you're going to be doing things, you're going to be at Walt Disney World and walking around for 12 hours in the sun. Sunscreen by itself is not going to provide a great deal of protection. A lot of sunscreens also don't contain ingredients that can help protect against visible light and blue light that is also from the sun, but it's also from our devices. It's from my ring light that I have going in front of me right here. And there's also some emerging research suggesting that this visible light, this blue light, also causes changes in the skin similar to UV radiation. Maybe not to such a significant degree, but definitely so when it's coming from the sun, because you're getting that intense light with that UV radiation. And most people don't apply enough sunscreen to reach that SPF on the label, so they're not really getting the protection that is marketed. They're not necessarily getting the SPF 30 or the SPF 50 or the SPF 100 because they're not applying enough, and they're not applying frequently because you can sweat off sunscreen, you can actually accidentally rub it off, some of it can be absorbed. You're not getting that SPF for all day if you're just doing it once a day. So it does require frequent application, and that can be costly because sunscreens, they tend to be somewhat on the pricey end, especially higher end sunscreens. And they sell them in small bottles, so you definitely go through a lot. And so I think that having other means, sun protective clothing is great. UPF 50 hats that protect your face, and clothes and sleeves that protect your arms and the backs of your hands, which the backs of your hands are extremely vulnerable to the sun and UV. Just having, sun protective clothing, UPF 50, and sunscreen combined together. There's actually a study suggesting that UPF 50 clothing, sun protective clothing, is better than sunscreen in protecting the skin against UVA and UVB. But really combining those together is phenomenal. So I highly recommend investing in some UPF 50 hats and clothing and clothes, just for that extra layer of protection. But there's still a need for more natural, even internal approaches to sun protection as sort of an adjunct. Sunscreen, staying out in the sun or staying out of the sun, especially during peak hours in the spring and the summer when the sun is the strongest, wearing sun protective clothing. These are all adjunct methods that help to protect the skin, protect your body against that the ROS, the reactive oxygen species that occur from UV exposure, from the inducement of the matrix metalloproteinases that degrade collagen and elastin. These all play a holistic role together to protect the skin against the UV radiation. But there's still a need for, if you're like me and you sort of want to go the extra mile when it comes to health and well-being and, all these different facets of life, you want to add just another step, another layer to what you're already doing, because this is going to just provide, it's going to get you to that next phase where you are protected even more. And I know it's not always about just being 100% protective and always protecting yourself every step of the way, because that's just not logical. That's not life. But doing what you can with what's available, with the research that we have that backs it up, I think that it's really important to go ahead and at least in my life, what I do personally is I do go that extra mile, and I do apply extra things that not a lot of people do, just because I want to get that extra, I want to get to that, extra step, that extra phase, like I said, so that I can be, in a better place than I would if I was just using one thing or two things like sunscreens and sun protective clothing. I want to have something else that is protecting my skin from UV, from visible light, from blue light, things like that. So just providing extra antioxidant protection is critical, and you can do that through your diet. So you can consume vegetables, teas, herbs, spices that contain these antioxidants, and they do to a certain extent localize and sort of integrate themselves so that they do have a photoprotective effect on the skin and do protect your skin against UV radiation. But this fern extract that I am making this whole episode about, this Polypodium leucotomos, every time I say it, I get better and better at saying it. But this PL extract, PLE, this is a fern, like I said, from Central and South America, and it contains many different polyphenols. So things like cinnamic and ferulic and colorogenic acids. These are all acids. These are polyphenol acids with well-known, well-documented antioxidant properties. And both in vivo, in vitro studies have demonstrated that this extract exerts certain photoprotective effects. But it does this through several mechanisms, and it includes inhibition of the generation as well as the release of ROS, of these reactive oxygen species. In addition, it may also inhibit matrix metalloproteinases. These are protein enzymes, MMPs, that, again, like I said previously, degrade collagen and elastin. But really, it is about inhibiting that reactive oxygen species and protecting the skin against the sun from the get-go, so you don't have those downstream effects of the ROS and the oxidation and the MMP and the lipid peroxidation and things like that. So this extract inhibits or prevents damage to the DNA as well. It prevents damage from damaging the lipids in the skin, and it also potentially prevents the activation of pro-inflammatory factors and the induction of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is definitely is one to be avoided. But I mean, there's a lot of other reactive oxygen species that you want to avoid. But in addition, there's research suggesting that this fern extract may inhibit the UV-mediated loss of extracellular matrix adhesion, and also prevents keratinocyte apoptosis. So this is going to have some implications in the discussion further down the line when we talk about the science behind this extract. So we're already seeing sort of the background of this fern extract and showing how, possibly it may really play a significant role in protecting against the aggressive contributor to the aging process, the sun and UV, which we're all, if you're listening to this podcast, we're all trying to not necessarily avoid, but definitely keep a safe distance from the UV radiation. But when it comes to this fern extract, it's been used in traditional medicine for centuries. And when I say medicine, I obviously don't mean pharmaceutical medicine, but prior to the scientific industry that we have today, plant-based medicine was part of cultures for millennia. So thousands and thousands of years, plant extracts have been used for a variety of different things, and PL is no exception. So it's been used for a lot of things for the management of skin diseases. Only recently, and by recently I mean in the past few decades, has research demonstrated the bioactive constituents of this fern extract and its effects, and the effects of these constituents on overall health. Like I mentioned, there's a chemical composition of PL that I think is important to understand. It has many different polyphenols like colorogenic acid, caffeic, cinnamic, ferulic, and vanillic acids. Like I said, these are phenolic compounds. They have considerable antioxidant activity. Caffeic and ferulic acids, these have been shown to have the strongest activity. Vanillic has the weakest antioxidant activity, but it's still in there and it still has activity. So it definitely still provides some inhibition of lipid peroxidation, and ultimately it does provide protection for cell membranes. So it protects the skin just overall. And PL also acts as sort of a scavenger for reactive oxygen species. And it does this against superoxide anion, oxygen peroxide, hydroxyl. So these are highly active reactive oxygen species that PL acts on and scavenges and sort of stabilizes the free radicals. But it also inhibits oxidative damage through two separate mechanisms. So it does this by activating our sort of natural endogenous antioxidant systems. Like I said before, these things include enzymatic antioxidants like catalase and glutathione peroxidase. You remember in my first podcast, I talked about catalase being really important for breaking down hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is extremely damaging. It's a free radical, causes oxidative stress in the body. It also contributes to gray hair. So when it comes to anti-aging, maybe that's important to you. But it breaks down that hydrogen peroxide so that to I think like water and oxygen. O2, and so it breaks that down so that it can just sort of be shuttled out of the body and it doesn't sort of build up in your hair shaft. Over time, though, it's harder for our bodies to produce, catalase and superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase to really break down that hydrogen peroxide. So having some sort of natural component in your diet and your lifestyle to improve your endogenous antioxidant systems like catalase is really, really important. At least if you're, if anything, just to protect against that reactive oxygen species of the hydrogen peroxide. But I think that's really fascinating, interesting that it helps to increase the endogenous antioxidants. I was really, really pleasantly surprised by that because once I got down the rabbit hole of hydrogen peroxide and anti-aging, I was trying to find all these different ways in which I could increase catalase. And so in my previous episode, like I said, there's even yoga and exercise, meditation, gratitude, these like mind-body techniques that can increase catalase. Even just like an antioxidant-rich diet that includes spices like turmeric and curcumin and cinnamon and just leafy green vegetables can improve, and fruits and deeply rich colored fruits and cabbage and Brussels sprouts and things like that. These are going to help to increase that antioxidant pathway and the mechanisms and systems in your body to help reduce hydrogen peroxide by increasing catalase and these other enzymatic antioxidants. So it's really having a diverse plethora of components in your lifestyle that you're really not triaging, but combining together in a strategic way. That's the right word, a strategic way that it all comes together. And, maybe you're not doing all the things every single day, but you're doing them every week, and you're doing one thing one day, another thing the other day, and it really builds up on itself. So it really is about a compounding effect. And that's sort of what I think about when it comes to sun protection is, it's not just sunscreen. The sunscreen's one layer, and then you add sun protective clothing, you add a hat, you have sunglasses, that's another layer that, doubles your efforts. And then you add a supplement that may protect against sun damage that triples your efforts. And it just like compounds one on the other. But making sure still that you're living your life and that you can go outside freely and easily, but just making sure you have that protection. That's what I think in my own mind whenever I'm approaching this. But getting back to the science. So before we get into the studies, one last thing that I wanted to touch upon on this fern extract of the PL is that it is there are anti-inflammatory components. So I found this in my research too, just reading through some studies and some literature reviews on this extract. There is some research suggesting that PL does modulate key inflammatory signaling pathways, and it does this through decreased production of several different key inflammatory mediators like nitric oxide, highly inflammatory. So PL also partially inhibits cytokine production. So cytokines are pro-inflammatory proteins, and it inhibits these cytokines in white blood cells with the T helper 1 inflammatory response pattern. This results ultimately in reduced levels of IL-2 or interleukin 2, as well as interferon gamma, IFNG, and interferon alpha. The PL also inhibits IL-6, interleukin 6. So that's also part of the Th2 response, the T helper 2 response, highly inflammatory as well. These interleukins, these IL-6, 13, 16, 33, these all play a role in various inflammatory diseases, especially dermatologic diseases like atopic dermatitis and psoriasis, eczema. Well, eczema and atopic dermatitis are the same thing, but we can see a clue in that, and there's definitely a lot of research showing the upregulation of these inflammatory cytokines in the skin when it comes to the visible signs of aging, and when it comes to sun exposure and the downstream effects of that. The inflammatory cytokines are just part of that downstream effect. But it's really important to keep in mind that the extract, this fern extract, may help to ultimately decrease those levels of those inflammatory proteins. So I think that's really interesting. I found that so fascinating, and everything that I can do to help to have an anti-inflammatory lifestyle and diet. You've probably seen my anti-inflammatory video if you're subscribed to me on YouTube. I do have an anti-inflammatory diet video. I think it's like 45 minutes long or something. It shows you everything that I ate in like one day, like breakfast, lunch, dinner, to help to just live an anti-inflammatory lifestyle, because that diet is really important, and making sure you're not eating sugar, or at least really reducing your sugar intake, making sure you're not exercising too much, because that also leads to inflammation. And meditation may also help with that inflammatory response. Let's go ahead and get into the studies. So there are several studies over the years on this fern extract, and this is what I think is really fascinating to me, because I find just like reading research studies on anti-aging and specific products or foods or nutrients or lifestyle interventions, I really like to read these studies because I want to see the science behind it. I want to see, what is applicable, what I can take from the research and apply to my own life. So I found one study that showed they took human volunteers and they irradiated skin with both UVB and UVA radiation. So again, this comes from the sun, ultraviolet radiation from the sun, both UVB and UVA. This is what reaches the skin. This is what causes the damage to the skin. What they found was the administration of PL was associated with successful blocking activities of the inflammatory response that was caused by that UV radiation. That kind of already makes sense, because we've already gone through the background information of, I just talked about it, actually, the inflammatory response associated with the sun. It successfully blocked that inflammatory response. So that's really important to keep in mind that, we have that potential anti-inflammatory component to this extract. There was also a study that looked at topical application. So when it comes to this extract, this fern extract, it's sold typically in supplement form, in oral form, in like capsules that you just swallow. But there are some studies looking at just applying it to the skin. They did this one study did topical application of the PL extract. They applied it 2 milligrams per centimeter squared, and they did this immediately before UVB exposure. So UVB is the UV radiation you get from the sun that causes a sunburn, but it also causes DNA damage, contributes to the increased risk of skin cancer, also contributes to some degree to the aging process. But they did this right before sun exposure, and this resulted in a statistically significant reduction in sunburn cells by 80%. 80%. So one of the things that you'll see when you look up this product, and we'll talk about the product in a minute, but when you look at reviews, a lot of people say that when they take this and they go out in the sun, they don't get sunburned. So I think that's really cool, especially when we have science to back that up. So we have 80% reduction, significant reduction in sunburn cells, and it also prevented the formation of cyclopyrimidine diners, CPD. And overall, this sort of confirmed, at least in the researchers' minds, the photoprotective effect of PL extract against at least the acute damage from UV. So the sunburn that you experience, that's sort of acute, but really the chronic long-term exposure that you get and the long-term damage is visible later on and over time. But it definitely protects against the acute UV damage. So a lot of people, like I said, the reviews that I read, people will use this like when they go on vacation, when they go out in the sun, and when they go sit by the pool or go to the beach or something like that, they go to a tropical environment, they'll take this and they find that they don't burn. It's really fascinating. But there's also several studies on the oral administration of PL extract, showing that the oral administration, or taking the supplement form, is associated with fewer sunburns or fewer sunburn cells. So one study showed that oral PL extract inhibited UVA-induced infiltration of neutrophils, as well as mast cells, and the generation of sunburn cells, just like the topical application. And it also inhibited the observed decrease of epidermal Langerhans cells. There was another study showing a decreased incidence of erythema or sunburn, the reddening of the skin, when a supplement was given at 240 milligrams twice daily for 2 months. So the supplement that actually is on the market, I believe it's 240 milligrams. I'm not sure if it's just one capsule that's 240 or if it's two, but I do believe it's recommended, at least in the studies. They usually administer it twice daily at the 240 milligrams because I'm not sure. I think some studies are definitely supported by the company, by the supplement or the nutraceutical company. Some aren't. Some are independent research studies, but a lot of the studies do look at twice daily at 240 milligrams, so that's important to keep in mind. But it's pretty easy because I think like the products, and again, I'm not affiliated with any company, I'm not being sponsored, but I do think that the products are I do think that they give it in 240 milligrams per capsule. In terms of the anti-aging, so we've covered sunburns, we've covered erythema and DNA damage and things like that. But let's get into the anti-aging benefits of this supplement. So if you've been watching this YouTube channel for a while, or if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that this is a significant topic that comes up a lot, that we talk about a lot. This is the third episode on anti-aging. This is the third episode total in this episode or this podcast show. So, I'll have more topics later on down the line, but anti-aging is definitely an important component of one's lifestyle, especially my lifestyle. The approach that I take to life, is I'm definitely very intentional when it comes to my diet and exercise and various different things when it comes to anti-aging. But when it comes to the research behind PL extract and the implications of anti-aging, there is research to suggest that PL extract, this fern extract, does have promise in the treatment as well as the prevention of photoaging. So it's caused by, or at least it's due to, the effects on the extracellular matrix remodeling. So basically, PL has been shown to inhibit several matrix metalloproteinases, or these MMPs, like I said, these enzymes that break down collagen. It induces TIMPs, these TIMPs. I've discussed that in a previous episode, as well as elastin, TGF beta, and different types of collagen. It also induces TIMP, TIMP, which I talked about in a previous podcast. It also induces elastin and different types of collagen, thus promoting regeneration of the extracellular matrix and the skin. So, wow, that is actually quite interesting. So it induces elastin and collagen. I love that. Okay. I'm like really motivated now to take this. Again, not selling this. I'm not affiliated with them, but definitely interested in taking this sometime soon. But I'll talk about that later on in the episode. There was another study that assessed the effects of PL extract on common deletions associated with chronic UVA radiation. Like I said, this UVA radiation is what contributes to skin aging, but there was a study that evaluated the effects of PL extract on deletions associated with chronic UVA radiation in skin cells in 10 people. So the people, they were exposed to specific doses of artificial UVA light with or without pretreatment with the PL extract. And so the results, they didn't reach statistical significance, and the researchers think it was because of the small sample size in the study, but there was definitely strong evidence they saw of a blunted increase in the common deletion in patients treated with PL compared with those without. And they said that this suggests that the PL extract might prevent UVA-induced photo damage by preventing the UVA-dependent mtDNA damage. So it helps to prevent that DNA damage associated with UVA. There was another study showing that had molecular evidence that showed that, so the visible light spectra, like I've talked about before, visible light can also contribute to photoaging to a certain extent because it produces similar changes in the skin. It does produce reactive oxygen species. It does produce oxidative stress to a certain extent. And there are some in vitro studies that use human dermal fibroblasts that have revealed or that have shown that PL extract does prevent these cutaneous changes associated with visible light-induced photoaging. So the researchers think that it does this by preventing dermal fibroblast cell death that's induced by both infrared radiation as well as visible light. And this is significant since many sunscreens, they can't protect against visible light. I mentioned that earlier. There are some mineral sunscreens, zinc oxide, titanium dioxide, to a certain extent that they can protect against visible light and blue light. But iron oxides, these are found in tinted mineral sunscreens or just tinted sunscreens. These contain protection. These offer protection, the skin protection against visible light and blue light. And this can be really important and significant for people who have darker melasma prone skin or hyperpigmentation prone skin, or anyone who deals with hyperpigmentation. Visible light does drive that. So having something like iron oxides can be really helpful. I don't know, from what I'm aware of, I couldn't find any studies suggesting that the fern extract, the PL extract, can protect against hyperpigmentation. I can do a little bit more digging because I'm very interested in knowing if there's any sort of changes in that regard, sort of those cutaneous changes of pigmentation associated with supplementation of PL extract. But I think it would make sense, but I just don't know how that would necessarily work. But I think that, having that extra layer of protection, not just a tinted mineral sunscreen that may protect against hyperpigmentation or photo damage associated with visible light, but also having the supplement because there are some research studies suggesting that it will protect against that visible light. So I think that's really, really cool. There's also a good deal of research to suggest, like I said previously, that PL extract has those effects on several molecules in the extracellular matrix by inhibiting the MMPs, specifically the matrix metalloproteinase that inhibits collagen 1 synthesis. It increases TIMPs, and increases the secretion of elastin. It also increases both fibrillin 1 and fibrillin 2 expression. So it has these significant effects and impacts on the skin, the extracellular matrix, when it comes to collagen and elastin and inhibiting those MMPs. So one of the biggest things that activates those MMPs is the sun. So UV inhibits activates matrix metalloproteinases and thus degrades collagen, and various things that degrade collagen, but MMPs is definitely the primary culprit here. But there are natural inhibitors, and it looks like PL extract may be a natural inhibitor that I definitely personally would love to incorporate into my supplementation regimen, but I haven't yet, so I'll talk about that later. When it comes to the tolerability profile, PL extract, this fern extract, seems to be well tolerated across studies. So that's good to hear. I'm sure everyone's different. I'm sure everyone responds differently to supplements. And again, I think it's definitely important to discuss with your doctor whether or not you should take certain supplements. I know for me personally, I have a list of supplements that I want to take, like resveratrol with astaxanthin and NMN for that NAD precursor, that activation of NAD plus, which I talked about in my first podcast episode, probiotics and krill oil, and now this like fern extract I definitely want to take. But there's just a list that I want to go down with my doctor and be like, okay, is this okay? How can I structure this to be realistic? Vitamin D3, definitely have to take that every day because I don't go out in the sun. But yeah, just making sure that I can structure that with clinician advice is really important to me. And yeah, I think that's really important. But when it comes to the product just in general, so this fern extract is probably, and you're probably aware of it, maybe you take it even yourself, but it is marketed under the brand name of HelioCare, and you can get this on Amazon. That's probably where I'm going to get it, because I think it's like a 30 or 60 day supply. I'm not sure how much is in the product, but it's perhaps the best known product. There are other brands, I believe, of this fern extract that you can get that may be more inexpensive. I'm not sure. I just know that the HelioCare definitely is the product that has the most research behind it. I think that most research studies that look at this extract do use HelioCare. I think that the company probably does sponsor some studies. That would make sense, but I think that when it comes to using a product, like maybe it's a skincare product, maybe it's a supplement, finding the actual brand that was used in the study may not necessarily be important, but for me, it just provides an extra component of confidence, maybe consumer confidence. Again, it may not mean anything. It may just, each product may be the exact same. I don't know. But for me personally, I do choose the product that has the research behind it. HelioCare has that research behind it. So I personally will definitely be purchasing it and using it this spring and summer. So what I plan to do, I have some trips planned in May. I'm going to the Cape. And what I want to do is I want to use it like every day straight for a week up until the vacation, up until the trip, and then use it every day during the trip. Because I'll be using sunscreen, I'll be using my wide brim UPF 50 hat, my sunglasses, everything like that, my sun protective clothing for the backs of my hands. But again, like I said, I want to have that extra layer of protection. I think that having a supplement like this might be a interesting way to go. And even if I don't necessarily notice any difference in my skin, I definitely will have it in the back of my mind that I am doing something that's adding the extra layer of protection. So that's personally what I'm going to do. Again, I'm going to be talking to my doctor about all the things that I want to take, because there are other molecules besides this extract that also has research behind it to show that it protects the skin against UV. And if you want to learn more about that, listen to episode 1 of my podcast, because I dive into some interesting molecules like resveratrol, which I already touched upon. Previously, and NAD, or nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, that may protect the skin against UV damage. Astaxanthin, a powerful antioxidant, potent antioxidant. It's a carotenoid that may also help protect against sunburn and protect the skin against UVA and UVB damage. There's other things, things that you can get into your diet pretty easily, like vitamin C, vitamin E. These are antioxidants that you can find pretty easily in fruits and vegetables. Really, leafy green vegetables are going to contain a good deal of vitamin C. I mean, you can get way over 100% of your daily value of vitamin C if you're eating raw leafy green vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, spinach. And if oxalates are important to you, you want to lower your oxalates, maybe stay away from the spinach and the kale. But, broccoli is a good source of vitamin C, and cauliflower is a good source of vitamin C, lemon juice, things like that. These are powerful antioxidants. Oh, vitamin E, another powerful, potent antioxidant, high in, I think you can get, sunflower seeds are a really good source of vitamin E. I think it's like 70% of your daily value for just an ounce, just fourth of a cup. So I incorporate that into my diet a lot, sunflower seeds. But these have also been shown, vitamin E, vitamin C, to protect the skin against UV damage and protect against the aging aspect of UV. The inducement of those matrix metalloproteinases and the reactive oxygen species and the oxidative damage and things like that. So incorporating those vitamin C, vitamin E rich foods is really important. So like I said, there's all of these episodes, I definitely want to touch upon specific topics, and I think that they all work together, like I was saying, meditation, gratitude, stress management and reduction, and these nutraceutical compounds, and various other things, exercise, and all these things that play a role and combine together to really form a holistic, powerful anti-aging lifestyle regimen. So, but each episode, I'm hoping to just really touch upon one single thing at a time, because these are things that, again, I'm researching on my own as they come up in my own mind, or if I read about something or I hear about something, I will dive deep into the research. And everything that I'm talking about in this podcast is something that I have already read about extensively. I've already read dozens and dozens of papers on it. Typically, as long as it's not something fairly new, and there's definitely some research behind it, but it's things that I'm doing anyway, and I'm hoping that it's helpful to you to hear all the research that I do, all the studies that I read, and just sort of summarizing that and providing that information to you. I hope that's really helpful. But that really rounds out the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you enjoyed this podcast, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button down below, leave me a comment. It really helps my video and my channel. Thank you for doing that. If you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, definitely leave a review. I would love to have your review, your 5-star review, and leave a comment there as well. And send me emails too at brandon@maymedcom.com. The first com is with 2 M's, M as in May, maymedcom.com as in communications, com.com. Send me some of your messages. What do you want to hear about? What do you want to discuss? Is there something that I missed that maybe I should learn more about? I'm always looking to learn more from you, from my viewers, from my subscribers, from people who listen to the podcast. So, definitely hit me up with your messages. I would love to have your topic ideas. And until next time, I hope you have a good one. See you later. Bye.